Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
Here we are, the two of us.
Here we are.
If Patreon's your thing, check out the link in the description below. Absolute loads of stuff on there, all starting for a bargain price of just
£1.50 a month. Cheapest chips.
How much?
£1.50. Believe it or not.
Bargain. Loads of stuff on there. We're just doing the we're in the middle of the we're coming towards the end of the Last Dance at the moment.
Yeah, we've
Jordan.
got left 2 or 3 maybe.
About 3, I think.
Something like that.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, been an absolutely fantastic series.
Yeah, really interesting. Really buzzing off it, I am.
Yeah,
I
just look forward to watching it every time, every week.
Yeah, it really is good. Where common terms and phrases originated.
Right, interesting. I do. It does make me wonder quite a lot of the time.
They use every day phrases.
Yeah,
you get. I always call them, don't know, someone like cliche men and people like that when they come out with like phrases. I'm just like, you know, when people are going to say stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I'm not one to use many phrases.
Oh, you're not?
No. But it'd be interesting to find out where they're from. Should we get into it?
Definitely. Yeah.
Where common terms and phrases originated.
Whether you realize it or not, the languages we speak are changing every day. And as the English language evolves, many of the words and phrases we use become antiquated. Their meanings are seemingly lost to time. Some evoke controversy and require reassessment, while others have found whole new applications. Today, we're going to revisit some age-old terms.
I wonder if it means the same over in the US as it does.
I'm sure it does.
Terms and phrases and explain where they came from and what they mean. But before we do that, be sure you subscribe to the Weird History channel. Then let us know in the comments below what other weird origins you would like.
I'm just remembering us in secondary school calling each other.
Oh, everyone, yeah.
It just cuts through everything. That
it does, but it's kind of making a comeback as well, because I've seen people use it on like terminology, like in social media.
Oh right, yeah.
So it must be making a comeback of like some sort of. You know.
Well, it's like fashion, isn't it? You know, some things just come round again, don't they? So
like to hear about. Okay, don't run amok, because we're about to cover that. Do you have the time to listen to us whine about how Green Day used the term basket case? But decades before Billy Joe Armstrong was even in a baby basket, the term basket case was being used in a not-so-catchy and fun way. The term was originally used to describe World War I soldiers who had lost limbs during battle. The reasoning behind the term basket case was implying that these now immobile soldiers would have to be carried around in a basket.
It's kind of used as a phrase for like someone who's a bit crazy, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. It usually is. Someone that's a bit out there, a bit sort of like not stable mentally.
That's what you say. That's
why we use it. That's
the
what
way
I've
I've heard
used
the phrase say. It's he's a basket case, or she's a she's a basket case.
A lot of it uses the term for is it Atletico Madrid saying it's a basket case club.
Yeah.
Or is it? It's something like it's one of the Spanish clubs anyway.
Yeah, but I think it probably will be Atletico, but it's it's always a female phrase. I've always used it as.
Oh, have you?
Yeah,
Oh, right,
I wouldn't call a guy a basket case.
Yeah,
I'd call him something else.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Women always use as a basket. If they've got a crazy woman, she's a basket case.
Oh right, okay.
While it's unclear if this ever actually happened to a wounded soldier, the term was so widespread that the Surgeon General eventually had to step in and deny any foundation for stories of basket cases in any hospital he knew about. Eventually, the term stopped being exclusive to World War I soldiers and became a catch-all phrase to apply to anyone who lacked emotional coping skills.
Where's this come
It's
from?
the perfect word to describe everyone on the road who isn't you. It shouldn't surprise anyone that the word moron is derived from the Greek word for foolish. Another great word to describe the guy who rode your ass all the way to work. But what might surprise you is the extremely blunt way the word moron was used in the medical field to describe substandard intellectual abilities. Dr. Henry H. Goddard had some pretty crummy views of mental disabilities when he coined the term in the early 20th century. He separated mental disabilities into 2 groups, idiots and morons. Idiots being mentally challenged people who do not have children, while morons continued the race with a line of children like himself. Goddard's words. Goddard and his eugenicist cronies had some other views that could be described as incredibly uncool. Today, the word moron has ceased to be a disability diagnosis and has more or less gone back to its foolish roots.
Yeah, I never really use it, me.
I use it a lot.
Yeah.
You normally call it my kids and they call it me, and it's usually, I think it's like a family thing sort of thing. So I do use it quite a lot.
You're one who was talking about the
doctor,
exactly. Right? Yeah, kept that chain of children going on. Yeah.
I think I do. Yeah, I use it quite a lot more.
Yeah, I've never. It's not. I think it's too mild for me.
That's probably why I use it really. So it's a bit more mild, not too sort of like too sweary. It's a bit more sort of like I don't know, acceptable, I'd say.
Hypothetically, if a rhinoceros were to escape the zoo and destroy the city, we might say that rhino was running amok downtown. Or we might say, "There's a rhinoceros!" Ah! Depending on our proximity to the rhino. The phrase, which typically evokes images of homicidal or violent behavior, actually originated with 16th century Indonesian warriors called the amuko. According to a 16th century merchant, Duarte Barbosa, the amuko were ingenious and subtle, cunning and treacherous. They were daring in their mischief and valiant fighters who would go out onto the streets and kill as many persons as they meant. English poet Andrew Marvell used a similar phrase in his 1672 satirical book, The Rehearsal Transposed, writing, "He runs amok, as they call it there, stabbing every man he meets." Exactly like a hypothetical
something I use
escaped
neither.
rhino.
No, I don't. No.
The scourge of every shy kid at a large gathering, the phrase, "Tack out your tongue," has been long used as a way to state, "Hey, you're quiet." The suspiciously specific phrase was coined in either ancient Egypt or the 17th century, depending on who you ask. Some versions of this origin story say the phrase is referencing the literal punishment of cutting out tongues and feeding them to cats in ancient Egypt.
Wow.
Others say the phrase comes from the 17th century British Navy as a way to mock fellow sailors who were whipped by a cat o' nine tail. The punishment was reportedly so painful that hapless victims were left unable to speak for some time afterward.
That sounds
Plausible.
more plausible, doesn't it?
It does really, yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I use it if you're talking to it's usually like if you're saying it to a kid, aren't you?
Yeah,
You're sort of like a shy kid.
Yeah, sort of
it
phrase
was,
I've used a lot of over the years, I must admit.
No.
But I think it was used at me sometimes when I was a kid. I remember sort of like parents saying it or whatever.
Yeah,
but
never me.
No, I can imagine. Yeah,
I've never heard this phrase. Have you? Grandfathered in?
never heard that.
No, never
Never
heard
heard of it.
No, me neither.
Wow.
Being grandfathered in means someone can keep operating as they always have, despite status quo changes. You could be exempt from new laws, get a great deal on apartment rent, or even retain your cheaper mobile service, after your provider realized how unprofitable unlimited data is for them. The phrase itself has its basis in legal context related to 19th and 20th century voting restrictions. Sometimes, as an attempt to disenfranchise voters, the right to vote had literacy requirements, poll taxes, and residency or property restrictions. But you could avoid all that rigmarole so long as your grandfather was exercising his right. Yeah, if you had a grandpa who voted before the Civil War, you could skip all the requirements and sashay yourself to the front of the voting line. The idea wasn't to restrict anyone from voting, but more to ensure that illiterate whites wouldn't be excluded from their civic duty. This blocked many African Americans from voting in many parts of the rural South. Eventually, the 15th Amendment would make it illegal to discriminate based on race. However, the grandfather clause had other requirements that allowed the law to be circumvented. Thanks a lot, Grandpa.
No.
Yeah, no, this
Long
one.
time no see.
Yeah.
We've all been in a situation where we unexpectedly run into one of our old high school acquaintances and have absolutely nothing to say. That's when it's time to reach into your back pocket and pull out the old reliable, "Long time no see." Its origin has actually been traced back to various non-English speaking groups, though who exactly started it is up for some debate. A dictionary of catchphrases, American and British, claims the phrase was introduced by the U.S. by British merchants in the early 20th century. Theories say the phrase is a Chinese translation of "Haqiu mei jian guo," which directly translates to "long time no see." The phrase first appeared in print in 1900 in a popular novel by author William F. Brannan. His attribution is to a Native American character who says, "Good morning, long time no see you." Later that year, "long time no see" was used by another Native American character in the book Tales of the Sierras by Jeff W. Hayes.
I reckon that
Interesting.
long time no see would be popular all over the world.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
quite common. It's quite a common.
Sounds
coin
a
term.
Chinese type of thing to me. If you're Chinese and sort of saying it in English, that's sort of like the way that they'd say it.
Yeah.
Sounding.
Yeah. I know what you mean because they miss out certain vowels and certain
Yeah, they tend to shorten things quite a bit, don't
yeah,
they?
certain words they'll miss out. Yeah, But it's definitely used over here a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I use it. I use it. I have heard it loads.
Yeah.
I heard loads of people say it. You know, I always when I say long time, I probably don't say long time. I just, but where have you been? Where have you been? Not seen you for ages.
Yeah. Same sort of thing, though, isn't it? But yeah, I think I've used that before quite a few times, I would guess. Yeah.
To describe something as hoit is to call out foolish behavior. The word is not used so much anymore, but in the 17th century, journalist Sir Roger Lestrange coined the phrase after watching people enjoy dancing. Best you can assume, Lestrange hated fun and described women, he says, changing and jigging to every tune they heard, and all upon the hoity-toity, like mad wenches of 15. The end of the 18th century saw the meaning shift away from describing boisterously annoying people. Today, the phrase is usually presented to people who are haughty and snobbish. You hear that, Lestrange? Who?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's more of a like posh people, you know. They're the hoity-toity.
Yeah, it's a bit hoity-toity.
Yeah.
Bit,
It's a bit high end.
Bit sort of posh, you know, posh speaking maybe, a bit sort of like well-to-do and all
Funny
that.
how it means totally the opposite
Yeah.
of what it first started out
I know,
as, pretty
bizarre.
much.
Who's
Yeah.
hoity-toity now?
Yeah.
If someone has ever accused you of something to avoid getting blamed themselves, then we're sorry to say you have been thrown under the bus. The phrase first appeared in a 1980 issue of the Financial Times. Author Eleanor Goodman used it in reference to the political turmoil happening in England at the time. Except over there, they call buses coaches. Since then, thrown under a
Do we?
bus has been used in
Well,
any
both.
context where someone is...
A coach is a single. I classify coach as a single decker.
I do.
And
know.
a bus,
And
has 2 floors.
the more upmarket one, buses I class as... You can have single-decker buses, but they're more public transport ones. I say coach is more like the private ones where, like the
okay.
National Express, that's like a proper coach. Ones that footballers, sports teams get ferried around in. I call that a coach, where they're a bit nicer inside, aren't they? Whereas a bus is just like general transport for the general
But even
masses.
if it's a small, like,
That's what I'd
minibus,
say.
I'd say I use the phrase bus for a small,
Yeah,
like, small
I
little
get that.
van.
Yeah, but that's how I differentiate coach and a bus.
I'm normally single
Personally.
story, double story, double decker.
Yeah.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
put into a vulnerable position. Rock star Cyndi Lauper may be the first to use the phrase in its current context in 1984, as she remarked to the Washington Post, "You are either the bus or you're under it." Still, others claim the phrase actually originated in minor league baseball, and their penchant for transporting players to away games via bus. We can only assume minor league players were routinely run over.
Fuzzy Wuzzy.
We know Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear, and we have some information about his hair situation. But aside from that, where did the original phrase come from? The origin is from a poem, but not that poem. Rudyard Kipling's poem, Fuzzy Wuzzy, originally coined the phrase when his British soldier character referred to the indigenous men he faced as Fuzzy Wuzzy. The people referenced were the Hadendoa, who had dark skin and curly hair. Today, mentions of Fuzzy Wuzzy are usually pretty complimentary, but the term and its connection to the physical appearance of the fighting Sudanese
never
warriors
heard it.
still remain to this day.
No, not really.
Paddy wagon.
Yeah.
During the early 20th century, the United States saw an influx of Irish immigrants flocking to the land of opportunity. What they also saw an influx of was Irish discrimination based on the perception of criminal behavior by those who hail from the Emerald Isle. Around 1909, it wasn't out of the ordinary for policemen to round up these paddies into the back of something called a wagon. Can you see where we're going with this? Ever since then, pretty much any enlarged vehicle capable of transporting any variety of criminal can be referred to as a paddy wagon. No Irish need apply. If you are planning to catch a tiger by its toe, you better make sure you equip your Eenies, meenies, minies, and mo's. While the spelling of the rhyming words may vary, the nursery rhyme is the same the whole world round. According to scholar Adrian Raffel, the rhyme can be traced back to England and Wales and the methods used by shepherds when they were counting sheep, just before they fell asleep. The precise origins of Eenie, meenie, miny, mo have been lost to time, but the sounds and cadence from the rhyme have transitioned into actual sentences and melodies over time.
Makes sense, the counting bit, I think.
Yeah.
Counting this like sheep or counting whatever cattle maybe.
Yeah.
It's not something I use now.
No. No, I've not heard it for donkey's years.
Same.
That.
Yeah, donkey's years.
Donkey's
Another one.
for donkeys. I've not heard of this one either.
You
actually.
may associate it with annoying people sitting in cheap seats while being loud and belligerent. If you're a bit older, you may remember it as the kids section on the Howdy-Doody show in the 40s and 50s. You may even relate it to Charlie Brown and the gang. But the origin of peanut gallery predates all of that, all the way back to 1867. The first documented use of the phrase was found in a review for a vaudeville show that described content that made individuals in the peanut gallery to blush. The phrase included some racial references as well as other controversial connotations that make the use of peanut gallery a negative thing to call a group of people. Not weird history, though. We rely on our comment section peanut gallery to keep things running around here. Keep those comments cranking.
I knew what this was.
Yeah.
I've heard this before.
We know what you're going to say. You know all about the rule of thumb and how it relates to that old wives' tale.
Yeah.
You know, the one that says there was an ancient legal provision that a husband could beat his wife with a rod or stick no thicker than his thumb. Well, aside from no evidence of that ever having been the case, nothing even comparable to it even appeared until the 17th century. But despite that made-up backstory, the framework of that belief stuck around well into the 18th century, when it became a piece of the conversation about any kind of punishment at all. Aside from that, the best anyone can assume is that the rule of thumb was related to the actual length of your thumb, for some reason.
See, I've heard of like something to do with like winners and losers
Yeah,
in like a joust or whatever it was.
I had no
as well.
idea about the origins of that one.
The
Never
one
even
I've
thought
heard
about
the
it.
housewife's tale about you can beat your wife with anything that
No,
was
have
like
you?
the width of the thumb. Yeah.
Right.
So it's I've heard a couple of different ones on that.
It's generally what is the general sort of like perception of something, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know, the rule of thumb. What's the general, say the general weight of something, or general size of something,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the rule of thumb. It's sort of like about this, that,
Yeah,
the
but
other.
the one I've heard more about is the stick.
Right.
But like you say, it could be a housewife's tale. But it dates back long enough.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
to validate it, but
Yeah.
I guess it's never been validated. I guess many of them haven't.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them can have. They're not
Different
quite
meanings.
sure, are they? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. This would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Don't know what this is. I know where obviously hooray is, but I don't know where it may come from.
Yeah.
Or what it means.
It's got to be like an old English thing, British thing.
Don't know.
Don't know.
Hip, hip, hooray. That cheer has been linked to many possible origins. One theory says that the phrase is rooted in anti-Semitism, pointing out the similarities between hip hip and hep hep, which references Jerusalem's destruction in 135 CE. The original version of the phrase continued on through the Middle Ages and even into the early 20th century. But others say it's nothing so horrible and is in fact meant to be a more cheerful cry. Sailors in the early 17th century were known to shout hip hip hurrah, which may be an early prototype of today's version. Historians also placed another militaristic version of hep hep hooray on drill sergeants, who had successfully trained their cadets and wanted to shout about it.
I'm guessing, is it the Dutch that say hop hop?
Oh, I don't know. Really?
Yeah, that's what I thought it might have been going with it.
Ah, right. Okay, maybe that's a sort of like a bit of a derivative of it, maybe. But
When you're feeling exasperated, no one could fault you for shouting, "Now wait just a cotton-picking minute," especially if you threw
Never
in
heard
some
that.
Have you not?
yee-haws
Oh, yeah, I
and
have.
maybe a couple "what tarnation" for good measure. The origin of this phrase comes from, no surprise here, the actual picking of cotton, one of the most tedious and least exciting parts of cotton production. Picking cotton all day was pretty rough on the fingers, which would become raw and eventually develop rough calluses. So, naturally, cotton picking became associated with bad vibes. Cotton picking is an old game, and the phrase can be traced back to sometime around the 17th century. But the racially negative connotations of the phrase can be found in the U.S. starting in the 19th century.
Never heard it.
yeah.
Never drink the Kool-Aid
When
neither.
No, I've not
someone
heard that
gets
one.
way too deep into a thing, we like to joke around that they've drank the Kool-Aid. Because who doesn't love a good joke? When Kool-Aid has been consumed, the insinuation is that the decision-making had been completely taken out of a situation and the subject will blindly follow any orders given. This phrase sees its unfortunate origin in the events that led up to the Jonestown Massacre in Guyana in 1978. Cult leader Jim Jones instructed his followers and their families to down a fruit drink laced with cyanide. Some were willing, many were forced. The final death toll was around 900. We have to admit, that's
Jeez.
not quite as fun as the Kool-Aid Man's catchphrase. So what do you think? What's your...
Wow. There's a few in there that I've never heard of.
Yeah, so I'm surprised you haven't heard of the cotton picking one.
No?
Because, I mean, you don't watch a lot of movies over it. It's been in a lot of movies over the years. And
Okay.
probably, I think it's probably used more in the South, you know, like in the deep South sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I'm not
I've
familiar with
heard
it
of
at
that.
all.
Yeah.
It's a few it wasn't just went by me, but there's some obvious ones.
Yeah.
But didn't really find out the origins, did we?
Not of all of them. No, like I say, some of them there could be one or two things, couldn't it, where they've come from.
Yeah.
But I guess it's difficult to pin down, really, isn't it? Well,
I wonder if there's any new ones that are like, because a lot of what kids use now is very slang sort of thing. You know, the way they use things. You know, our kids say something, and I'm just like, what are you on about?
I mean, but I think we've been through this before, haven't we? We used a lot of slang as well when we were growing up, but then it always gets replaced, don't I think, by the next generation. They come up with new words, and you know they want their own sort of like language, don't they? That parents don't understand what it is. So
But a lot of it's very similar. You can kind of decipher it, sort of thing. There's a couple of them like phrases that you like. I wouldn't even know what that meant.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's definitely some of those.
Always
I've just
interesting
not even
things
heard
like
of,
that,
but
though.
it's interesting how they keep going over, go for like centuries and centuries, can't they?
It's true.
And they're still used today. It's absolutely bizarre. It really is.
There you
But
go. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the next one. Cheers.